So a few days ago, I actually changed my controller settings and I showed them off in a video, and I actually found these controller settings through so many hours of just trying other players' controller settings. I have full-on spreadsheets with all of the best controller players' controller settings, and so when I say the new best settings, I actually mean it. I truly think that these are the new best controller settings. However, I just showed off the settings. I didn't really explain why they're so good. So I mean, we can just go ahead and start there on the very first part of the settings at build and edit Sens, which I have at a 2.1 for both build and edit. 2.1 really does seem like the maximum speed for me to be on while still being able to be consistent with my builds and edit. Consistency is really the number one thing that you're looking for when you're setting a build and edit Sens, because there's so many situations in game where if you don't get off that edit, it can literally ruin your entire game, just a single edit. And the same thing goes with builds. If you don't get that one pyramid down, you could go ahead and get piece controlled and your game's over. So while you're setting your build and edit, you want to make sure that you can almost guarantee that you're gonna hit every single edit that you make almost every time. And while a lot of this does come down to just practicing a lot and getting good at editing, your settings do play a role in it. If your settings are too fast, it's gonna be way harder to consistently make those good edits, and overall you're just not going to be as good at the game. And then on the completely opposite side, I've also found that there is a point where your build and edit are too slow. Even if it allows you to be consistent, it can be too slow. For the past few months up until I changed to these settings, I've been using a 1.9 build and edit, and on a 1.9 build and edit, I felt like I was more limited to strategic builds and edits rather than just quick plays. On 2.1, I found that I'm able to make like those really quick edit plays and catch these players off guard, and I personally found that that just wasn't really something that I was able to do on a 1.9. So that's build and edit. Now we can go in and look at the look sense, which I have at 43% for both horizontal and vertical with no boost. I am pretty confident in saying that your look sense is literally the most important sensitivity in all of your settings. In Fortnite, I would say at least probably 85 to 90% of your fights end in close range. You may start your fights from long range and get some tags in, but almost every time after you get those tags in, you're gonna go in and try to clean up close range. In close range is pretty much all fighting. It's build fighting, it's box fighting, it's literally all that types of fighting. And in every single close range fight, the majority of your shots are with your look sense. If you're not ADSing, then this sensitivity right here is based on your look sense. So if you think about it, every single time you're in a build fight and you take like a quick shot on someone like that, or you go in and you spray into someone's box, you're not ADSing in this person's box. When you spray in, you're going to continue to spray them while non-ADSing. And because there's such a heavy focus on spraying this chapter, like without spraying, you're really not gonna be successful. On controller, you have to be able to control that SMG aim. I've seen some people in my comments say that their look sense is all the way up at like 70%, and realistically, there is just no way to be accurate on like a 70% look sense. The overwhelming majority of pro controller players are using anywhere from like a 40 to a 47 probably. They're in that mid to lower 40s range. So I find a 43 to be that perfect sense because it's still fast enough to have good movement, and like during all your rotations, you can still move fast enough. However, it also allows you to have that non-ADS really accurate aim. So even if you don't like my exact settings that I give in this video, please, I would say if you're on linear and you're anything above probably even like a 50, try turning it down for a couple days and see how much better you do in your fights. Now we get down to the actual ADS sense, which I have set at 8% for both horizontal and vertical, and again, no boost. So at this point, you've seen all my sensitivities, my build and edit, my look, and my ADS, and there's probably quite a few people that have way higher sensitivities than this and think that these sensitivities are super slow. But if you guys look at this sheet of the pro controller player settings, you can see that there are people that go even slower. Days on a 1.9 build and edit. I also think Days on a 39% look. I could be wrong. Illest is on a 6% ADS. So really, according to those numbers, I'm kind of like middle of the line, maybe a little on the lower side. However, the reason why 8% is so good for ADS is again with the consistency. As the way it stands in chapter 3, your ADS sense is almost only affecting your AR aim and your sniper aim. There are very few situations where you're actually going to be ADSing close range. And while 8% is still very good for those close range ADS shotgun shots or that SMG close range ADS spray, the main thing that you should be basing your ADS sense around is your AR aim. ARs in chapter 3, especially for controller players, are literally such an important part of the game. And 8% just works super well for that really accurate AR aim, whether it's with a normal AK or an MK7. It allows pretty insanely accurate long range AR aim, which is something that controller players notoriously struggle with. And that's kind of the exact reason why ARs are so important in this chapter, is because it's really hard hard to succeed without having that good medium to long range aim. I would say in at least 70% of my fights, how the fight is actually initiated is by me just beaming someone for anywhere from like 60 to 100 damage with an AR. And then from that point, I can push in and go close range. So if you're not able to do that, or if you're not able to defend yourself against players that are playing more of a long range fight, then you're going to struggle. I personally think long range shots start to get hard to hit with any ADS sense over a 10. Before these settings, I was on a 6% for quite a few months, and while it was really good and my AR aim was absolutely insane, I did find myself in situations, especially with people like gliding in the air on the Spider-Man, or people that were like closer to me while I'm trying to track them. It was just a little bit too slow in those situations. So I found on 8% I could still be really accurate with that really long range AR aim, but now because it's up a little bit, I can actually track those players that are in the air that are close to me on the ground. So now we get to the part of the settings that aren't really talked about that much, and that's the input curve, boost, and dampening time. As you can see, all of my boosts are 0, my look dampening time is 0, and my look input curve is linear. And this is because I prefer all my sensitivities to be completely consistent. This means every single time I move my joystick, no matter how little or how far or how long I hold it, every single time the reaction of my character, how my character moves, how my crosshair moves, it's always the same. When you start getting into exponential and boost, your movement and your crosshair is going to be affected by how long or how far you press your joystick. So on exponential, you're not going to be moving at full speed until your joystick is all the way as far to the left or right or up or down as it can go. On linear, it doesn't matter if I push my joystick just barely or I push it all the way down, it's always going to move at the same exact pace. And for me, this just goes back to consistency. I find that because every single time I move my joystick, it moves the same exact amount, it moves in the same exact way, it moves at the same speed, I just really think it's a lot easier to be more consistent. And this same sort of idea is reflected by most pro controller players as well. The large majority of controller players are on linear, and they're also not using any boost. Like I said, that is the majority of pro controller players. There are definitely pro controller players that use boost and that use exponential. Ree is one of those players that actually uses exponential, and Ree is obviously a very successful controller player. However, there are way more examples of players being successful on linear with no boost than there are on exponential or players that use boost. And I think for most people, the settings that I'm showing off in this video are going to work very well. Now we get to the very last part of the settings, and that's gonna be the dead zones, which I have set at 10 for left and 10 for right. Now dead zones are going to be very dependent on your specific controller. I have to use a 1010 because my PS4 controller is a bit older and I've been using it for quite a few years. So if I go and set my dead zones to like something that Phase Sway uses at a 5 and 5%, I can build around here just for a second, let go, and as you can see, my view is drifting when I'm not actually touching my controller. So that's exactly what stick drift is. So for Phase Sway, he likely doesn't get stick drift on 5%, so that's fine for him. However, for me, I was finding up until 10% I was getting stick drift. And stick drift really does just make the game a lot more difficult when it doesn't have to be. While it can affect stuff like your aim, it's more so just annoying. Like stuff that can happen is when you're searching a chest or reviving someone, you can look at the chest, you can start to open it, and then your stick is just gonna drift away from the chest, and you're gonna have to go and restart that revive or restart opening the chest. So because of this, you definitely want to make sure that you have a proper dead zone value set. I use a 10% on a PS4 controller. However, the best dead zone value can vary whether you're on PS4, whether your controller is old or new. If you're on an Xbox controller, a PS5 controller, a third-party controller, a SCUF, every single one of those controllers is gonna have a different dead zone value that works best for it. So as a kind of general rule of thumb, I set my dead zones as low as possible without getting stick drift. So if you're in the market for new settings, definitely give these ones a shot.